This is Tools for Nomads. Tools for Nomads is an up-close and insightful look into the lives and habits of passionate and creatively prolific people who embrace and cherish the nomadic lifestyle. Brought to you by Topdrawer. As creative professionals, we know the nomadic lifestyle is as much a mindset as it is a way of being. Visit topdrawershop.com or visit one of their dozen-plus meticulously outfitted shops in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Berkeley, Chicago, and Tokyo. topdrawershop.com. I'm Tom Pollard. I've traveled the world in search of adventure. Since 2001, I've been a member of the Explorers Club. I'm a filmmaker, mountaineer, even a sailor. I've been to the top of Everest and helped build and sailed a ship made of 2.5 million reeds from Chile to Easter Island. I almost got eaten by a mako shark. I've filmed with orcas, elk, bear. From five-star hotels to the cold, cold ground, I've visited a lot of cool places over the years, but there's a whole lot of places on the globe I've yet to experience. As a little boy growing up in New England of the United States, I was transfixed by television programming that opened my eyes to remote and dangerous parts of the world. I lived for programs like The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau and Marlon Perkins' Wild Kingdom. I dreamed of becoming one of the camera persons who filmed encounters with giant octopus or elephants or lions. And it would come as no surprise that I'd one day actually become a documentary filmmaker. A documentarian can get up close and personal to a topic, gain an intimate understanding and bird's eye view of the subjects he or she is documenting. The camera itself acts as a portal into as of yet undiscovered and hidden secrets of the world. Growing up in a middle-class community in the United States offered me plenty of opportunities to pursue whatever passion that filled my heart. While I've yet to set my own two eyes upon a lion or lioness outside of a zoo, it's just the matter of a few twists and turns of fate that have kept me from experiencing it firsthand. My guest today, Rodney Nombekana, grew up with a similar love of all things animals, albeit with a childhood quite different from my own. He was born in 1977 in the largest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. The hospital is in Soweto, a township of the city of Johannesburg in South Africa, where Rodney grew up. Perhaps as far from the apex predators of the savannah or bush as one could get. And given that Rodney was born during the time of apartheid, the system of segregation based on race that was in place in South Africa and West Africa until the 1990s, Rodney had no easy path carved ahead of him upon which to pursue his passion of wildlife and animals. Growing up in the townships, Rodney started rescuing dogs, bringing injured birds into his home, but the political climate was one of unrest, therefore an unlikely environment for him to develop his interest in nature and animals. Today, though, Rodney is known widely as one of the foremost safari tour guides in southern Africa. Leopard and lion sightings are now his norm. His path to get there is a story of passion and persistence, belief in himself. Here's where Rodney and I share something strikingly similar. His dreams of working with elephants and lions started when his family got their first television set in 1985, a small black and white TV with programming about the wildlife parks. Who knows, we were probably watching the same television programming about the same national parks in Africa. Today, Rodney lives in Johannesburg. His heart and soul, however, are in the 2 million hectares of unrivaled diversity and wildlife of Kruger National Park in East Africa. Lions, leopards, elephants, wildebeest, wild dogs, baobab trees, wildlife of every kind, just like what both of us used to watch on TV as little kids. Rodney runs his own safari and wildlife tour guiding company called Nombekana Safaris and Wildlife Photography, where one can experience the park in either five-star world-class lodgings and accommodations or by camping and barbecues to the sounds of lions roaring right outside your door or tent. He's a world-class photographer. Here's my recent interview with the humble and talented Rodney Nombekana from his home in Johannesburg, South Africa. Rodney, it's so cool to be able to talk to you. I'm really honored, and I'm inspired by your career and what you've done.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for inviting me. I'm blessed that I'm doing what I love. So it may sound like a lot of, achievements, but for me, it's just a normal life for me, and just doing what I love. So it's good to be here. Thank you for the invite, and I feel very honored to be here.
Thank you. Well, to me, that is the most interesting thing of an individual, is not necessarily their accomplishments or the the awards they've won or the mountains they've climbed. It's that they had something in their heart that they loved and meant something to them, and they pursued it and they went after it, and then they got there. Not that either of us or anyone is done. There's much left to do, but you found a calling when you were a young boy, right? Or just a youth growing up. And could you tell me a little bit about that and the seeds of this, what it was like, and tell me where you grew up and what kind of conditions it was where you were?
Well, I think I'm one of the most fortunate people in South Africa and probably in the world, because I've experienced a bit of both lives, what I like to call the city life as well as the rural life. So up until the age, I think the age of 10, 11, I was living in Johannesburg. But then things got a little bit unstable politically. So my father, who comes from the rural areas, he only came to Johannesburg to work. So he felt the need that he would take us to the rural areas. And I think for me, that's where my calling and my love for animals and nature was really, started, if I can call it that. Having said that, even when I was living in the city, I was a kind of a different kid to others, because I was always hanging around with dogs, trying to, look after animals, dogs, cats. I had dogs, I had cats. I remember we used to travel from Johannesburg to the Eastern Cape with my family, and my mother would would always tell me that her house is not a zoo, because I would pick some small birds called weavers. We call them weaver birds. And sometimes the babies would fall out of the nest, so I would take these babies and feed them. So this was while I was still in Johannesburg. So the love, I think it's something that I was born with. I just didn't know it. Looking back now as an adult, I think it's something that I was just born with. Then I moved to the Eastern Cape in the rural areas, and from there, that's where my inspiration for nature really was ignited, because I was now exposed to seeing different things, not just buildings, but beautiful trees, the ocean, the mountains, which is something that I wasn't really used to in Johannesburg. We had a very interesting childhood. My classroom, for example, at some point it was under a tree, and I'm not exaggerating. So it was quite a humbling experience growing up there. But things were quite difficult because we didn't really have career guidance and all that stuff on what we wanted to do. I remember some of us who would be asked what we wanted to be. We didn't know. All I wanted to do was work with the animals, but what job, I didn't know. So when I finished my schooling, then I had to now look for something to study further, and I went to Cape Town. on the western coast of South Africa, and that's where I studied nature conservation. And that's when I got to understand now what I wanted to do. I wanted to, spend the rest of my life, helping animals, saving animals, and yeah, that's me in short, and how I grew up in terms of the animal side of it.
Wow, it's really inspiring. There's about 10 questions I have, but I'm going to try to limit them. One, I'm fascinated by the classroom under a tree. So
Yeah.
were you in? Was it like a village, or were there cars there? Like, literally, what, like, paint a picture, because that's fascinating to me. Like, because now in where I live, and as a kid growing up, it was like, oh, because you've behaved, we're going to go outside today. And then the kids would screw
Yeah.
around and start throwing acorns at each other's heads, and we'd have to go back in. And but you, that was all you had? Was there literally four walls, or?
I mean, yeah, it was a village, to answer your question, and particularly when I moved to high school, our high school was very, very limited. So there were
Yeah.
certain classes that were decent, but the rest of it, I mean, everything was just falling apart to such an extent that, again, it might sound like a joke, but I guess animals have always followed me wherever I went, because I remember if it was raining, for example, the classroom was a mud house, mud hut, if I can call it. It was made up of mud. So when it gets older and older, it sort of kind of falls apart, and there's holes here and there. So when it's raining, the goats in the village would obviously find some sort of shelter in our school. So they would go into the classroom, and obviously there were chairs there, and the desk and everything. So every morning when we came in, we had to chase out the goat first, and then
Wow.
clean the what you call it, the chairs and everything. But of course, it's with the urine and the the dung of the animals, sometimes it can smell. So if the weather is good, it was actually cleaner and better to just go and learn outside than it was sitting in the classroom.
Wow.
So the school was, yeah, there was not much there, but we had good people that were passionate about what they were doing. They're trying their best to
Yeah.
teach us, and yeah, that's what matters. We didn't
Yeah.
have laboratories and all these things.
It does. It is. Rodney, you nailed it. It is. It is so what matters. There are so many children around the world, and it will continue to happen, that they have an idea or a dream, and there are people or friends who call themselves friends, or even parents who are like, no, you can't do that. And so they're taught to doubt themselves, right? And so the key is, it doesn't matter whether your school is a multi-million-dollar structure with air conditioning or heat. Or a mud hut that the goats run to during a rainstorm. It's the people who inspire and give the power to dreams to youth. So it really doesn't.
100%.
Yeah, and so you obviously had that.
Yeah, 100%. We had really people that were really passionate about, and really cared about us, because
Yeah.
they know how difficult it was during their time when they grew up, and they wanted us to be somewhere. So at the end of the day, is a classroom is just the walls, but what gives people the education is the people.
Yeah, it
You
does.
can be sitting in a multi-million-dollar university, but if the teachers or the educators are not committed to the cause, then you're not going to achieve anything. So I was really lucky, and privileged, because we had really people that really cared about. They did the best they could with the limited resources that they had.
Mm.
And yeah.
So you said that it was kind of closer to the Eastern Cape. So were there like gigantic animals there? Were there elephants near, or lions, or so, or were you away from that?
No, not at all. So the part of the Eastern Cape where I come from, there was no big animals like elephants or anything like that. In fact, uh, throughout my childhood, I would see elephants and lions on television from the Kruger National Park. And for me, again, when my father first bought our first television in 1985, that was like the biggest thing ever. It was a small Telefunken television and black and white, and I mean, it was just like, I will never forget that day. But anyway, so we would see the animals on television, really. And the area where I came from in the Eastern Cape, we didn't really have those big animals. We had small animals, the antelopes, what you guys would call the deer, for example, in America. Yeah, so it was up until I was preparing when I was studying my nature conservation studies and preparing to start working, that I, got to then experience the true big game animals like elephants, lions, buffaloes, and rhinos, and all that in the Kruger National Park. And yeah, so I think the progression was quite good in such a way that when I was in the Eastern Cape, it's something that it gave me the motivation to study and work harder so that one day I could even, get to see these animals. Because for me, that's all that mattered. I remember at the time we had the teachers that were very passionate, and they were telling us about you know um, we must be lawyers and everything. And for me, it's just like it would come on this ear and go on that ear, because I knew that was just not me. But if you started mentioning animals and then I would listen to you.
You're listening to my September 2021 interview with apex predator and wildlife photographer and safari guide Rodney Nombekana from his home in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The finances were always a problem. So at some point, my parents couldn't afford to pay for my studies, and I decided it would be better for me if I'm working and study. So I went and studied part-time. So I had, a lot of time when I was studying part-time, but I felt I needed to do something, more. So I went to this place that at that time it was called the Lion Park, and I asked if I could volunteer. The funny thing is, the story about this is, so I'm my early 20s, probably 21, somewhere there, but I was very young. So at this place, they were not looking for people to work, number one. So I said I wanted to volunteer, and the manager said to me, we don't take volunteers, sorry. But I wasn't going to take a no for an answer. I wanted to help. I said, please, 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 please. And then eventually got tired of me. He said, okay, cool. Next week, come on a weekend and come and help us out. We'll see what we do. And then I went on the weekend. First weekend, I volunteered Saturday, Sunday. And then by the end of that weekend on Sunday, he called Mr. Melas, may his soul rest in peace, good man. He called me to the office and said, Rodney, yeah, it was good to have you here. Would you mind coming next week and helping us out? I'll give you a little bit of something. I'll pay you this time. So, so I went the second weekend, and I helped out. And at the end, on a Sunday again, he called me to the office. He says, he had a big voice. He's like, Rodney, I think I like you, young man. Would you mind working for us full time? So that was my third weekend. So yeah, he saw something that I didn't see in myself. And then, yeah, that's how I got my job. Although I was working with the animals, these were still animals that were still in captivity. So it was still not in the wild and not in the Kruger National Park. And, my childhood dream has always been that at some point I would love to, to see the animals and work with the animals in the wild. So eventually after 12 years, then I resigned and I started doing guiding, safari guiding. Now I was taking people into the wilderness and showing them the beauty of Africa, which is something that I still do to this day.
Rodney, so conservation and the message of conservation is a big part of it. Is there a lot of pressure on the animals, on how like encroachment of human populations, poaching? Is that a big problem?
I think it's definitely a thing, and what's very important to note for me is the fact that these animals, whatever we talk about, whether we talk about lions or leopards or birds or any animal, at the end of the day, is that the biggest threat to these animals is it's the the degradation of the habitat. So humans are expanding, and we're taking up space for the animals. It's not just in Africa. I'm sure it's the same in the United States as well. And the last 20 years, the amount of difference that I have seen in the area where I live, where big cities are cropping up and all these things. So all those things are obviously going to affect the natural world and where the animals live. So things like poaching are a real problem, especially now with the situation with the COVID. Unfortunately, people are probably tired of hearing the word COVID, but it's a fact. We are living in these times, and we cannot ignore it. I mean, during the COVID time, it's been so difficult to manage certain areas because a lot of these parks, they depend on ecotourism. They depend on people coming and seeing the animals and spending the money because the people that are working there are employed. And when you don't have revenue coming in, that will filter down to the animals. So the pandemic doesn't just end with us, but it goes beyond us. It goes to the animals.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really important to hear. And it is just another thing I need to push me to Africa to visit you. So, Ronnie, so in terms of how you work and how you organize your day and everything, do you have an office? And then when you're out on the road, do you work? How do you get your work done? Is everything in a bag, or do you need a desk and a computer? Or,
I'm the most simplest person in the world, so I don't need much to go around. My office is the bush, so I can be in the bush for a long time. I'll still be able to do my work just fine, as long as I've got my cellular phone and the bush, and that's my office. Once in a while, if I need something really out of the world, out of the ordinary, then I would need an office. But I don't have an office. I'm a small, like, individual person, if I can call it that, like a self-employed guy, if I can call it that. And my office is my home. So I am at home even now.
Rodney, so you're preparing for a trip on Saturday. What do you have to bring with you? So when you get ready to walk out your door, what's in your bag? You're an amazing photographer. Your Instagram page is just one small sample of it. But what do you have to have with you? So when you go to meet your client, your friend, is it a truckload of things, or is it a bag load of things? What goes with you?
Well, usually, all I need with me is my books, my binoculars, my camera, which is a very important tool in what I do now, because now not only am I a safari guide, but a safari guide stroke wildlife photographer, if you can call it that. Sometimes if I've got a client that's camping, then I would need to bring tents and all that stuff. But this guy is not a camping person. So, so we are staying in one of the chalets there. Everything is organized. All I have to do is to go to town and go and get some food for him, and I cook for him. So my safari, the nice thing about my safaris is that I do what a client likes to do. So he likes me to prepare food for him. And I'm not a chef. I'm the most horrible person to cook. But what I do well is what we call the braai in South Africa. You guys call it the barbecue. So that's my cooking. So he likes the barbecue a lot. It's a South African thing. Some clients, they want 5-star chef and all that stuff. Then we would go to a lodge, because the Kruger Park it's a big area. So you get anything from camping to literally 5-star treatment. So it all depends on what you'd like to see. The most important thing in all of that is that, of course, I have to choose the best place to take the person for the game viewership, the wildlife experience. So you try and balance the two. The Kruger is so big, and it depends what people want.
So I just have to ask. So when you cook him, you said you're a horrible cook. So what? So is it an open fire? Is it an open flame, or is there a grill? And what do you put on it? Does he eat? Is it like? Do you make him a steak or something?
So so in the afternoon when we come back from the game drive, I come back, I make a fire. The fire is on what we call a braai stand, where you actually put the wood and all that and make a fire. So it's open fire. And then on top of that, then you take I would say like a grill, and then you put it on top, and then you put the meat on the top. So whether it's chicken or beef or lamb, doesn't matter. But it's the most delicious thing ever.
Incredible! Oh, I love that. I'm salivating. So Rodney, as if you need any more inspiration, because the wilderness, the bush, the animals, the connection with people provides you with so much. Are there other things that you, maybe outside of that provide you some inspiration, whether it's reading or listening to music or writing in a journal or something? What is?
Yeah, I would not be doing justice to this interview if I did not mention my love for photography and what it has done for me. So besides the fact that I take people out on safari, the last couple of years I've also been very involved in wildlife photography, which is something that I discovered quite late, to be honest. So I'm a guide first, then I by chance just happened to be involved in wildlife photography. That's another story on its own. But so for me, photography is everything for me. I kid you not, Tom. My life is I work in the bush. I holiday in the bush. Everything is about me being in the bush. So I'm not, I haven't watched television. I don't know, 12 years. So for me, it's just everything that I do is in the bush, and my photography is the big thing now. And I think I also need to mention that as much as I discovered the photography quite late, and it started just being a hobby for me of just taking pictures of the animals, but over the last couple of years, it's gotten really serious in such a way that I see it as a tool for me to inspire the young people, especially. I'm very passionate about the young people, but not just young people, everybody in the world, because the photography has allowed me to see the nature in a different way, if I can call it that, in such a way that I can see detail. When I look at an animal with my eyes, it's beautiful. but it's a different version when I take my lens and I look through that lens and I can see the whiskers, I can see the paws, I can see the tail, I can see the tusk of an animal. The detail for me is incredible. And I guess, again, I just had, a natural gift of taking photographs, if I can call it that, because I never went to school for photography. So it's all self-taught within the last couple of years. But I think my understanding of animal behavior has sort of allowed me to be able to read situation and therefore get much more meaningful photographs, if that's the right word to use, than just a person who knows just a camera. You can know the camera, but if you don't know your subject, then it can be a problem.
Rodney, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you and your work. Did I miss anything?
If you haven't been to Africa, South Africa, you have to come. 3 places you have to come and visit in your life. The first one is the Kruger National Park, and the second one is the Kruger National Park, and the third one is the Kruger National Park. And that's how passionate I am about this place. I love it so much. So I look forward to seeing you guys, and it's a great pleasure.
Rodney Nombekana. He says that when you do what you love, everything comes naturally. His work, knowledge, and passion inspires those he comes into contact with. And he told me after our conversation that if one person became inspired by listening to his story, then we have done something great. In unison with his many roles as a photographer and safari guide, Rodney is also a director of the Kevin Richardson Foundation, which endeavors to acquire and protect key tracts of land to protect and expand natural lion habitats. In Africa, lions have been forced to survive on land that is only 1/5 the size they occupied only a few decades ago. If the habitats shrink any further and the lion population continues to decline at the same rate, it's predicted there will be no lions left in the wild in 20 years' time. Rodney, thank you for your work and your passion and your talent, and for bringing all the glory as well as the challenges of Africa to the world through your work and social media. Links to visit Rodney's page and the Kevin Richardson Foundation will be found in the show notes of this episode. Thanks for visiting Tools for Nomads, an up-close and insightful look into the lives and habits of passionate and creatively prolific people like Rodney Nombekana. Tools for Nomads is brought to you by Topdrawer. At Topdrawer, nomadism isn't simply about being on the move, it's about loving and living life where the things we carry directly impact our productivity, our well-being, and even our identity. Topdrawer combines the quality and craftsmanship of our grandparents' generation with the drive for independence, function, and stylish sustainability. It all results in a collection of tools curated from around the world that help you do your best work wherever you are. Visit topdrawershop.com or visit one of their dozen-plus meticulously outfitted shops in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Berkeley, Chicago, and Tokyo. Topdrawershop.com. Thanks for visiting. I'm Tom Pollard. I'll see you next time on Tools for Nomads.